revealed that the tepid sequential momentum has been seen in May of 2022. Aditi Nair is principal economist at ICRA, and she's joining us to tell us more about this. Aditi, good to have you with us here. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
What have you found, Aditi, in May, and I mean, how are things looking, till now in June as well? I don't know if you have the data, but go on.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks. We launched the ICRA Business Activity Monitor last month, and in its second month, what we've seen is that the value of the index has gone up to 118 from 116 in April. So that's good, but the actual month-on-month increase is very tepid at just 1.7%. And it's very much lower than the 5 to 6% kind of levels that we would see in terms of the up move between April and May in the pre-COVID period. So what we fear is that this is an early indication that there is an impact of the headwinds, both from the geopolitical tensions as well as from the higher inflation, which is the fallout of the former. And specifically, if we look at, one of the most telling indicators, which is the GST e-way bill, the daily average generation actually is to a 4-month low in the month of May. And we think this is actually an early indication that there is some amount of pain that is being caused to household budgets, particularly for the discretionary consumption, which has led to this sort of early dip as far as the GST e-way bill generation is concerned.
Okay. Aditi, hi, welcome to the show. This is Ekta. I wanted to get your sense in terms of what all of these indicators and the possible softness that you've seen as well will mean for inflation going forward, because we've had WPI, which has been at another record high, which has come in. It's risen now for the 14th consecutive month in double digits. Do you think that there would now be some softness simply because, there is softness in the business activity taking place?
See, on the WPI side, Ekta, our view is that it's going to really be a reflection of global factors. So there's a very, very quick transmission of commodity prices, the INR, into the landed prices of imports, and that has a very rapid transmission into the WPI as compared to the CPI. For the CPI, the trends in food items are going to matter more, and more than that, what happens with the service sector activity. That is something that we're going to be watching very closely to see whether the CPI inflation is now going to secularly trend down from that April peak. Of course, it's going to remain elevated. It's going to remain painful for a while. But we do think that, as far as the June numbers are concerned, we may get a slightly flattish number from the CPI side. Services activity, see, our view is that growth this year is going to be extremely uneven. We have the same headline growth projection for FY23 as the MPC, which is 7.2%. But our quarterly projections on growth are quite different, and therefore so are the inflation expectations. So we don't think Q1 is going to be quite as strong as the 16.2% that the MPC has penciled in. We think growth in Q1 is going to be more in the range of 12 to 13%. And that Q2, Q3, and Q4 are going to be a little bit better than what the MPC had projected in April and in June. So our view is that demand will be a little bit stronger in a back-ended fashion this year, particularly for the service sector. And this is going to be, playing into the CPI inflation dynamics for India as well. So we're going to be really watchful of what kind of price increases come through on the services part of the CPI, because that is going to really give a good indication of how the core CPI is going to move going ahead, and where we can expect to see it sort of easing down to by the end of this year, and therefore playing into the projections for FY24 as well. So both on the demand side, we think service sector growth is going to be far stronger. That's going to lead to better income visibility for a large number of households, and be a palliative against the inflation-constrained demand that we expect will be felt, particularly by the low to middle income groups in the months ahead. And on the inflation side as well, we think that whatever happens with the food inflation between the monsoon and also the global factors, other than that, it's really also going to be services inflation which will play a major role. Fuel inflation, of course, remains a concern. We'll have to see whether there's more transmission to pump prices going ahead. Clearly, that's going to be a big determinant both of the inflation trajectory and of inflationary expectations.
Aditi, irrespective of what the inflation index shows, I think, we were just having a chat internally, in office, rather complaining to each other. The cost of everything has gone up, right? It's sky high. You take, your Ubers and your Olas. You take the cost of stepping out to get a meal at a restaurant, or ordering in for that matter, right? I mean, that has gotten more expensive as well. You take flights, I mean, hotel stays, movies, whatever. And all of this, of course, is indicative of a very strong economy. But at the same time, not very much from an India perspective, but there seems to be a little bit of concern about a global slowdown, which is starting to come through, and it feeds through various channels eventually. How are we positioned into the next couple of months with respect to discretionary consumption? I mean, sectors there, Aditi, in your opinion?
Sure. To my mind, we don't have strong domestic demand. We have uneven domestic demand. And that is why we are seeing that inflation is going to be higher in some categories. We also expect growth to be higher in some categories and not so good in other categories. So I'll just elaborate on what I was saying earlier. There's going to be a lot of households right now where inflation is going to bite right away. Between vegetables, edible oils, fuel prices, all of these have an immediate translation into household budgets. And that leaves very little room for discretionary consumption. So we do expect that shrinkflation will have to be a reality because people will just not be able to fork out higher prices. So grammage will have to be cut so that people can at least consume a little less than what they could earlier, but that's really perhaps what a lot of households are going to be able to afford.
Okay.
For the middle to higher income groups, we see a very different, economic price reality, spending reality. Here we think that there is going to be a very clear prioritization of services consumption. The stuff that you couldn't do in the last 2 years, or that you maybe felt a little afraid to do, eating out, eating in, movies, holidays. And so this is really going to boost both the output and jobs in the sectors that really languished in the last 2 years. And that is also going to lead to better income visibility for a group of people that just had, very bleak employment scenario in the last 2 years. So that is going to both support the service sector consumption and the consumption of all those households that are benefiting from this.
Aditi, I think we're losing you on that line, but we're going to wrap up the conversation on that note as well. We'll get you back on to discuss more questions in terms of where this would leave the RBI and the trajectory going forward in terms of rates as well from that front. As of now, we have to thank you. Thanks, Aditi, for joining in. We need to take a short break, but up next, Manish Hathiramani of Deen Dayal Investments will join in with some trading strategies. Stay tuned.